Hey, what up, everybody? Stevie Breach coming to you. This is going to be me talking about meeting one of the biggest legends that I've ever met before. I went to a show, geez, it probably has been 2 months now, it might have been a month ago, the BTW WrestleFest. Where I got to meet a whole bunch of wrestlers. One of the wrestlers that was high up on the ticket, probably the biggest star there was there that day, was Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret Hart, like I said, it was like the leader of the pack. He was on the they call it the super ticket, where I think you met a whole string of wrestlers for $80, and there was a few big names on there: Bret, Terry Funk, Mickey James, the Honky Tonk Man were like the biggest names on there, and it was a few of the undercard guys that were on there. But it was easy for me to look at the price and want to travel out there to go to that show with my buddy Mario to meet Bret Hart. Honestly, he was the one guy there that I really, really wanted to meet. I wanted to see what would happen with Shelton Benjamin. As you can see by my Shelton Benjamin video that I put up the day that we came back, it was worth the price there just to get the the thing from Shelton. So you can go back and check that video if you need to. But I'm sure a few of you go back and watch that one just to see my face, because I was still pretty shaken up when I made that video as well. But this video is about the Hitman. Bret the Hitman Hart, honestly, was one of the guys who got me to change up the way that I was watching wrestling. 1991, I was about 10 years old, and I started to fall in love with the Bret the Hitman Hart versus Mr. Perfect match on my tape from SummerSlam 1991. No, I didn't have the Coliseum home video. I had 2 blank VHS tapes that somebody recorded the pay-per-view that more than likely they didn't pay for, and they gave it to me. Either that or I just never returned it. But I had that tape for years, and I watched it all the time. SummerSlam 1991, maybe because of how repetitively I watched that show, it still to this day is one of my favorite. It is my favorite pay-per-view of all time. I don't think anything's ever come close to that. I have my own separate review of that one if you want to check that one out as well. But just how great that match was, and it did, like, forever in my life, I was plugged in watching Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan is your favorite wrestler because it was the main storyline. It was what the whole show was all built around. But here is this awesome wrestling match in the middle of this show that I really loved for some reason, and there really wasn't a huge storyline. Bret the Hitman Hart, he was sort of like the guy coming out of a tag team, and he was sort of finding himself as a singles wrestler, and he found himself wrestling against the Intercontinental Champion, Mr. Perfect, who I think in 1990, somewhere around there, I think that's about time. He had lost to the Texas Tornado. That might have been later. I might be mixing things up, but he didn't really lose that much, and he ends up losing this match to Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret the Hitman Hart at that point, he kicks out of the Perfect Plex, and in that mind, I blew up. I still blow up watching that match today when I hit that spot, because it was like no one had ever kicked out of the Perfect Plex, and here Bret the Hitman Hart does it, and it was like, holy cow, the ultimate underdog is going to win this match. I love that match. I can talk to you about that match for days. I think there's SummerSlam 91, Survivor Series 90, Survivor Series 91. All 3 of those shows are just excellent. They're from beginning to end. I mean, like, if you want to sit down and watch wrestling with me, that's what I'm asked that we put on, because I love that. But the Hitman was the guy that, maybe it's not about the main storyline. Maybe it's actually about, wrestling inside of the ring, and maybe that's, really, draws you to it, and finding these matches that are going to be there. And even today, you find guys like, Daniel Bryan, who's like right now he's got a big storyline revolving around him, but for the past 2 years, I'm sure there's been some fans out there who, like, he doesn't really have a whole lot going for him, but you really find yourself drawn to the way he watches matches. He's probably one of the guys that are out there today that I can really say that him, and maybe people fell in love with CM Punk the same way if they watched his matches, like with him against Rey Mysterio, and they really didn't like the storyline. They didn't really like the wrestler, but they fell in love with the matches that the guy was having and really wanted to help put this guy over. But the way they did it was Bret the Hitman Hart was on the second set of these guys. It was sort of like they had the first guys, and you walked through and you did a photo shoot, and then you walked along a table and you did an autograph session. For these guys, they had the Honky Tonk Man, Terry Funk, Bret Hart and Mickey James. They were all sitting at a table. They did the whole gimmick of you had to like put your item down. They signed it, and then you had to do this weird lean in where you're like leaning around a table to take a picture. We were on the opposite side of the table, but still it was awkward to get your thing in there. When I went to that show, I dug through my box and I found some figures because I thought it'd be cool to get my picture with my old school figure. So I found my Bret Hart one, and actually, when I was digging through and trying to find those figures, I found a pair of the Hitman shades that came out in 1990. Not the cool, old school style ones. I remember the story came out that they didn't know. They had forgotten who made those, and they couldn't find a company to make them for them. So they had to go with these, separate, sort of like the WCW shades that he wore back in the day. And so I put those on for the photo. It was hard for me to figure out what I was going to get Bret to sign that day. I was thinking, do I get his book signed? I had a figure of his signed, and then I ended up finding a steal of a deal on a Bret Hart figure. What are those called? It's the Elites, the newer ones. I didn't dig it out for the video because I forgot. But I promise you that I have one. And it looked really, really freaking cool once it was all done. It was actually funny because my buddy Mario, he ended up buying the same figure, so we both brought the same thing to go along to the show to get signed. And I saw a lot of people getting those signed because I think that's the newest figure that he's came out with. And those Elites, the way their boxes set up are really, really cool. That are the defining moments when he's like this, and it's got the Canadian flag in the background. Those would be really, really cool. I bet he's got a Unmatched Fury as well. That is the set that I've started getting signed. Maybe I should become like Assault and Battery is the classic Superstars guy. Maybe I should be like the Unmatched Fury guy. I don't know. Those things are pretty flipping cool. They're a little bit hard because the way they're boxed to put on the wall like he does. But I don't know. I really, really like those figures. They look pretty cool. But the way I talk, if you've ever met me in real life, I'm very hyper. And if I'm all fired up, I spit words out real fast. Like, at the beginning of my videos, I always say, "Hey, what up, everybody?" And it doesn't really sound like you're saying things, but in my brain, it comes out perfect. And Bret Hart, who had his stroke and all that, I got to meet Bret Hart. I was the first in the line, and I think I honestly said like 3 things extremely fast, and I don't think his brain even caught up because he just looked at me like, "What the fuck is going on?" And I'm like, this is not going that well. And I had so much I wanted to tell him how much I loved the SummerSlam 1991 match, and how much he got me to change into wrestling, from just liking the main things and now going into actually watching awesome wrestling matches. I wanted to ask him about how he could think that the WrestleMania Triple H against Undertaker thing was so mad. I wanted to ask him about I wanted to tell him how I think that he is the godfather that started the Attitude Era. There's so many people who think it's Stone Cold Steve Austin, but if you remember back to right before WrestleMania, he fought Sid in a steel cage match for the title, which would have made Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart, the championship match, and would have just made Undertaker versus Sid match. I don't know what DVD that's on, if it's on any of them, but that's a real freaking cool thing to watch because Austin and Bret hate each other. Sid and Undertaker hate each other. But both of them, all 4 guys, don't want to lose their match at WrestleMania to be their championship match. So it's kind of weird. You see Bret in the match, and Stone Cold's helping him. Undertaker's helping Sid, and it ends up being a whole screw job at the end of the thing. And then Vince goes in to interview Bret as they're taking down the big blue cage, and Bret shoves Vince, and this is bullshit, and he's just cussing up a storm on USA. And that was like the really first time they really they started talking like that on TV. And so many people look at Stone Cold like it was him, and I always, sort of point the finger at Bret. Bret's the guy that really started going then in that direction with this whole, pro-Canada gimmick against the United States, and everybody getting away with saying a whole bunch of stuff they probably shouldn't be saying on TV. But I had said so many questions, and I wasn't sure if maybe he didn't want to answer those questions, or maybe he just didn't understand me. So I just slowed down, and I asked one simple question, and I just what was the deal about you coming back in 2010? You were the commissioner for just a few weeks, and you were in charge, and then all of a sudden they just took you off TV, and then you were gone. They brought you back for SummerSlam. You were in the match, and then you were just ghost town. You were just, never to be seen. And he went on this little tirade about how the the writing staff doesn't know what to do with anybody, and they have an idea, and they use it for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden that idea is no good anymore, so they just throw it away. And he just got lost in the shuffle, and he just stopped calling and asking what was the deal, and so he just got put off on the back burner, and he was gone. And I sort of took that answer like, that was all right. But the way they were doing the pictures is like it got really, really slow because Terry Funk was 2 people down. He was on the other side of Hunky Tonk Man. And when he was writing stuff, it took him a real long time to write autographs, and he talks really, really, really slow when he talks to people. So Terry Funk was sort of slowing it down. So I'm just sort of hanging out next to Bret Hart waiting to get my picture taken. And the next thing I know, he sees my action figure, and we start talking a storm about these freaking Hasbro action figures. He asked if it was mine, and asked if it was a kid, if I had had it since I was a kid. And I started talking about how, when I grew up, I had a Bret Hart figure and I had a Hogan figure. And he sort of gave me that look like, Hogan figure. Oh. Like it had to be Hogan. And it's pretty funny now that I'm sitting here thinking about how many sort of enemies that Bret Hart really has. When I got my picture taken, I snuck in the 4, like I was doing the 4 Horsemen deal. I was really only doing that because of the whole 4 out of 10 deal. When it really comes down to it, and it gets all around the whole, 4 out of 10 deal. I don't know if Bret is sort of against Triple H. A little part of me believes that and I don't even know how it makes sense, but I think that like Bret Hart believed that Vince McMahon was going to give him the company. Like I sort of feel like he has this grudge against Triple H because he's going to be moving into the spot of taking over WWE, and I don't know if Bret thinks that he is owed it, but I think in Bret's brain, I think that he feels that he's the guy that should be taking over WWE. Like Vince should be just giving him the company, and I think that's why he hates him so much. If you want to see a good match of these 2 guys, I think it's the only match they've ever had. It's from Monday Night Raw, probably around 1996. That was the main event of one of the shows, leading up to a match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. Triple H and Bret Hart actually wrestle in the match, and it's actually a pretty good main event for Monday Night Raw at the time. So I'm sure it's on YouTube. You can definitely look it up and find it on there. But I had a lot of fun. Bret Hart was the main guy that I went there to go meet. Once I found Virgil was going to be there, I wanted to have my own Virgil experience. It was also cool to meet Colt Cabana. I have a whole video about the whole day of going there, but I'm glad I got to share my experience about meeting Bret Hart with you guys. Everybody have fun. Peace out.